So I do want to make just a quick opening statement again. I think the conversation we had last week was excellent. I was just making the point before I started recording that there are people that we would consider to be right patriots and Americans. They identify as being Americans and patriots, and they believe in the republic. Who are totally on board with us. They agree with us 100%. But then there's others that are patriots. They don't, but they're oppositional. They're having issues. They can't quite come to terms with this notion. And one of the things I want to point out is that one of the kind of contradictions with them is I'll ask them, I'll say, do you believe that any Tom, Dick, or Harry or Jose that comes over from India or Pakistan or Colombia or Mexico is entitled to the same rights and privileges and immunities as the bloodline people who've built this nation? The fact that there were men and women that established the United States of America, we refer to them as the founding fathers, and they said that they ordained it unto themselves and their posterity, which is clearly and obviously privity of bloodline, your children. When you pass something on to your children, they wanted to ensure, and they did so by declaration and in treaty, that they were establishing everything that they established for themselves and their posterity. And they certainly knew full well that they were not going to be around, in the future, but their children were. And they wanted to make sure they could safeguard and secure that, to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and their posterity, as they put it. And as I've indicated in other videos, there are millions of Americans right now who are bloodline posterity, that their family, literally their blood created the United States of America, the constitutional republic, and they don't know anything at all about it. At the same time, we have a bunch of patriot movements out there that are all pointing out how the current government, which is a corporation, is fraudulent and it's corrupt, and they've turned people into 14th Amendment citizens. And this is where the road gets rocky, in the sense that we need to start explaining things, which we've done on several videos, that in point of fact, going back to elaborate on what I call the contradictions that are made by some of the people that have been trying to be oppositional or opposed to the position we hold. If you ask them if any of these people that just come over from anywhere, who come over here and all of a sudden now they're an American, they should have the same rights, they'll say, no way, they shouldn't have the same rights. But yet, and they'll acknowledge that there's significance to the posterity, but because they feel they're somewhere in the middle, hey, my family's been here for, since the World War I, and we fought for this nation. And so I think one of the things I'm wanting to kind of cover two aspects of that discussion. Clearly, we can say that even people that might have come over that fought in World War I or World War II may have well come over as subjects to some other king, and they made their allegiance and they swore an oath to the United States corporation, that federal government. They did not swear an oath to the Republic of the United States of America, which is, again, an issue that needs to be straightened out, because there's many patriots that recognize the constitutional republic of the United States of America is not the same thing as the United States, which is a corporate government that is literally a corporation with a Dun and Bradstreet number.
It's a territorial corporate government.
Okay, so yeah, let me let you go ahead and elaborate then, just to give clarity to this discussion. And then MJ, if you want to add or ask questions, same with Alex, you guys just raise your hands and I'll bring you right in. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the government that's in place today is purely territorial to the 10-mile square, which they were granted the authority to do that by the people in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And they created a government by the Act of 1871, I think. They created a corporation for the operation of that 10-mile square, their government. It wasn't until later on, and starting in 33 with Roosevelt and ended in 45, I think, that they completely just set aside the republic and adopted this new federal territorial government. And you can read about that in Franklin Delano Roosevelt's speech to Congress in 1935, where he referred to our path to recovery, referring to the Depression, as a narrowly conceived effort to exchange the appearance of reality for reality itself. In other words, the reality of the republic, they were going to replace it with this appearance of reality, which is a new federal territorial government. But concerning naturalization, when we were a republic, there was the naturalization clause, which the founding fathers put in there so people could be naturalized. And when they got naturalized, they would have been natural status, citizenship status, as the posterity. But and at sometime in the 50s, Congress took, using the naturalization clause in Article 1, took that away from the states. Because previously, most citizenships was granted by the individual states. But in today's world, there's only in operation that federal territorial government, and they are only given citizenships as U.S. citizens.
Yeah, let me interject a thought there, Grant, that's significant. Like you said, it was the states that would grant that citizenship. So that's such a significant point. Maybe you can elaborate on it because it's relative to the fact that the only thing that existed when this nation was created was a state citizen because they were the United States. They were the Union. They were the Republic. They were what?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
The several states of the Union came together and formed the Republic after the people got recognition by the end of the Revolutionary War with the Treaty of Paris. And that's when the king granted them sovereignty and proprietary ownership to all lands.
And let me interject one more thought on this, and then I won't interrupt you again, because I want to make the point here that's so significant. So often we're hearing people talk about how, oh, they've turned it upside down. You know, the federal governments are telling the states what to do, and that's all true, but that's relative to the point we're making. The fact that the federal territorial plane took over, as Grant was describing, they have taken away what was once the people, meaning we, the people, the founding fathers, and their posterity, even casting that 14th Amendment citizenship over posterity. The people that have the most to be concerned about are posterity, who have been labeled 14th Amendment citizens, who have had their state citizenship stripped away from them without even knowing it. I just want to make that kind of significance because we so often hear about people talking about the federal government versus, the states, but yet they'll say the states are sovereign and the states have the authority, right? So there's that issue there that I think is really a major factor that we can, keep it front and center to clarify that things have been turned topsy-turvy. It is the states and it is the posterity. It is a state citizen, which is why people have to change their status from if they're entitled to, if they can, if they're in a capacity whereby they can change their status lawfully in the system from being a 14th Amendment citizen to a state citizen. I'm sorry, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, in today's world, since they did the switch, and they're operating the government completely territorial, and they've got pretty much everybody under the law of agency to make it appear that they've agreed to operate the status of a U.S. citizen. And that status makes you the property and franchise of the federal territorial government. So in today's world, this thing has got so far along that the only people that I can see, I may be wrong, that has some claim of right to be a state citizen is those who are the posterity because they have a birthright. And the birthright allows them to claim that state citizenship status. And with that state citizenship status, they they obtain a body of rights, a body of property, which includes rights, which was secured by the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, and the unenumerated rights in the Ninth Amendment,
And Grant,
and the rights of the ownership to the several states of the Union pursuant to the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment separated the several states as sovereign states in legal relations to the federal government that they created. The people in the several states only gave the government that they created certain enumerated rights, and they have no other.
and Grant, I just want to hand it over to you, just so you know. I want you to continue, but Alex raised her hand, so you continue,
Okay.
and when you're ready, you can say, "Go ahead, Alex." But continue.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Grant. There were the term United States citizens was present before already in the 18th century, and I'm wondering what is that term? I mean, even in the preamble, it says the citizens of the United States, and I wonder what did that mean at the time before the 14th Amendment was enacted in 1878 or something. But before, I did read that term. For example, when California joined the Union or some other states joined the Union, they did have like those acts of Congress did include the term citizen of the United States. And like I said, even the preamble. So do you know what that meant before the enactment of the or ratification of the 14th Amendment?
Well, the citizenship that was created, that was referred to in the Constitution with the capital C, citizen. If you go read the 14th Amendment, that citizenship is a lowercase c.
Correct.
Now, capital C citizenship was essentially created and recognized by the Crown in the Treaty of Paris. That was the agreement. They recognized us in a certain status and capacity, which the king granted as sovereignty, which puts you on equal footing with another sovereign of the sovereign states of this planet. So those people, because it says we the people, had already created a previous government. But now, since they got recognized in international law, they were going to create a more perfect union. And the preamble tells who did it, the purposes, and for who, for themselves and their posterity. And why? To ensure the blessings of liberty.
Grant,
nation.
Grant, let me have Grant just reiterate that again, because this is the point that people cannot miss that needs to be significant. They need to understand it. I'll put it in my own words. Grant, reiterate it and then move forward. That they had already established a nation before they said, now we're going to create a more perfect union. So there was a follow-up to their efforts on building this nation.
Can I interject just one thing? Because the small cap citizen, that term is existent before the enactment of the 14th Amendment. That was my point, and I wonder what that is. And I could cite
The
you.
only citizenship that existed before the 14th Amendment was the citizenship that was recorded in the Constitution, which reflects the treaty, Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris.
But that's a small lower C citizen.
No. Well, no.
Well, yeah, that's what it.
At the formation of this country, before the 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution, there was no small c as a citizen in the Constitution.
Yeah,
No,
let me
not
point.
in, not in the
Alex, hold
not
on.
in the
Alex,
Constitution, but
let me
in
just
the.
make a point. Let me make a point that's significant here. There is obviously not only Americans that are that might have issues trying to understand all this stuff, but there are powers that be in this world that don't want the posterity to know who they are. And you can betcha they put out, we hear them as, psyops, misinformation. And I will tell you, you can find multiple sources of the Constitution in the preamble where you'll find one that has citizen with a small c and one that has it with a capital C, because they know the significance of that. So just be aware that that may be a factor as well, depending on where you're reading that and where you're seeing
Well,
it. Sometimes
I'm reading this in the statutes at large from 1850, and that is section 19 of 31st Congress. And it has, for example, it says here, this is the joining of, New Mexico. I think this is when New Mexico joined the Union. And it says in section 19 that no citizen of the United States, and the C is a small cap C, and this is, like I said, a copy of the statutes at large from 1850. So this is before 1878. I just wonder what that means. And it is the lower C.
That could be because it's in the statutory law, but
Yes.
I'm referring to the Constitution.
Yeah, okay.
And,
Yeah. I have no question on the Constitution because that's clear from the Constitution. I was just wondering because even before the enactment of the 14th.
maybe that
Yeah.
style, maybe that's called the style of writing. When you capitalize a noun, it makes it a specific thing. Just like when they
Right.
use the word people.
Mm-hmm.
When they said people, they didn't mean the people of the whole planet.
Right.
They were talking about a specific group of people. And let's see, the
Grant,
Dred Scott decision.
Grant, hold on before you go with that. MJ had raised her hand during that aspect of the conversation, so she might have something to add or a question. Go ahead, MJ.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, I don't know if this may address it, Alex, but in the Second Congress, I don't know, are you aware of what the naturalization that was presented in the Second Congress in 1789 to 1790? You were aware of that document?
No.
Okay,
No,
well, there's a document, and I can I'll see if I can put it in the chat. But
okay.
there is a document. Are you aware of it, Grant?
No, I'm not familiar with what you're talking
Okay.
about.
So
Go ahead.
so in the Constitution, I mean in the Second Congress, this is our Second Congress right there at the time of the Constitution, there was they put in the naturalization. So they said what it had to be. And I'm just going to pop it in here. Yep, there it is. Okay. So they said you have to be of good character, and they used a small c to be admitted as a citizen. You had to be here for 2 years, and you had to be white.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You had to be white. You
Yeah,
had to be
free
European.
and white. Free
You
and
had
white.
to be
Yeah.
European. The only way you could be a small case citizen
Yeah.
is
Okay.
white.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was
yeah,
no
yeah.
other option.
Okay, so
And
they already at the time they already had the separation between the two
correct.
different citizens
Correct.
already before the
Yes.
14th Amendment.
Yes. Now have you guys read the document from our first Constitution? I mean, our first Continental Congress. Are you guys familiar with that?
I'm only familiar with one Stat 23, which is the first Congress, which includes the oath that the judges
No,
have.
you mean our first Continental Congress of 1774?
I'm not sure. No.
This is our first Continental Congress was 1774.
1774. So
Yes,
that's
our first.
before the Declaration of
Correct,
Independence.
because the Republic has we must understand. I mean, from my opinion, Constitution means contract. We operate in compact and covenant. We are a covenant people, and we operate in. This is the third republic, and and the covenant. We're of the covenant of the triune God, and that's what we are, and we are white, and we are from Europe, and it's very narrow, and it's blood posterity. And so in So our first, do you know about the 4,622 militiamen who shut down the court in 1774?
I don't, but I find it
Okay, let
interesting.
me put a link here. This is a fantastic video to watch. Because, well, and see, this is, I'm kind of working on this right now. There is, we have not been told our history, and it is, and so that's an issue. But I'm going to just let me not get ahead of myself. I have a lot of things here I could share with you, but let me first give you this link to now where is it? Okay, right here. This gentleman, Ray Rolfs, he has written a book called The First American Revolution. So it basically discusses the pre-Lexington. That we were America. We were a republic for we were republics in 1620 because that's just who we are here. We're the third republic, and a republic has three things. It has a king, it has a law, and it has self-governance. So the king for America is the triune God. And the government is on the shoulders of the Lord Jesus Christ. And the law is unconditional acceptance. You unconditionally accept your creator, and you unconditionally accept yourself, and you unconditionally accept others. And then we are to self-govern under this. And we're to steward our dad's stuff. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And here is from the here is the ending of the prayer. The first prayer that was prayed at our first Continental Congress. So this is what they said at the end of it. And this is what the first Continental Congress, October 20, 1774. Here is the second point of the document that they produced. We will neither import nor purchase any slave imported after the first day of December next. And what that means, it was by December 31st, 1775, slavery's done. After which time we will wholly discontinue the slave trade. We will neither be concerned in it ourselves, nor will we hire our vessels, nor sell our commodities or manufacture to those who are concerned in it. The posterity said, no, we're done. And this is who the posterity was. I will show you. This is from the very last, this is a little bit of the last, just before they went in. This is kind of like the preamble of that first Constitution, of that first Continental Congress. And this is what it said. This one's, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I forgot to, there you go. I forgot to send that one. There's that, what I talked about, slavery. So this, if you look at the very bottom of this, British subjects, okay, thus, by the influence of civil principles, ancient prejudice, do dispose the inhabitants to act with hostility against who? The free Protestant colonies. Whenever a wicked minister will choose to to direct them. So this is very clear who we are. There is no question who we are. The posterity is, and that's you guys are so on track. That's why I appreciate this group, because it is very clear who we are. And we have got to figure this out, because we are going to be annihilated if we do not. That is my opinion.
That's the plan.
Right. Yeah,
They don't even realize there's a war against them.
Exactly. And that's what I've been harping on for the last few years since the pandemic began with the bigvirushoax.com and Righteous Army, is the fact that there are a people that are God's people, the one true God, the triune God, the Father, the Son, God Almighty, the Holy Ghost. They know that there's a creator who created all things. They believe in that creator's laws, his commandments. It is their choice and preference to walk in harmony with God Almighty. But look around us today in this nation that we call America. It's a den of iniquity. Hollywood, the television programs, the gaming industry. It's completely godless, immoral, perverted, self-destructive social trends with smoking and vaping and inking up the body and tattoos and free. Oh, I'm free. No more race, no more male, no more female. It's just an everything goes destruction of God's creation.
Watch it,
And
Mike.
Hey,
what's
was
that,
one.
Tim?
Watch it with them tattoos, buddy.
Yeah, no, Tave, clarify what you're saying, Tave, because Tave's got a little inside joke between me and Tave.
Yeah,
Tave,
in my younger days, I covered myself like I fell on the Sunday funnies. So I have a few, I have a few on me. It's just when he says that, I just laugh. It's been a long time joke. I apologize.
Mhm.
yeah, because when Tave first came in and we met a couple years ago and he was coming into the Righteous Army meetings, I've always, been very forthright about biblical principles and to me what are common sense principles, but it's that human beings have been suckered, they've been sucked into. I always forget the guy's name, the one that said we can hack the human mind. He was on TED Talk. Do
Noah
you,
Yuval Harari, psychopath.
right, the psychopath, exactly. We can hack the human mind. They clearly can. They've
Oh, of
demonstrated
course.
it, and
Yes.
they're getting off on it.
Yes.
They're enjoying getting people to destroy themselves, to destroy families, to destroy nature, destroy the relationship with God Almighty. I'm sorry. Go ahead, MJ. You had your hand raised.
Oh, no, yeah, I think, I've said a few things. Um, but I wanted to address one other thing too. So we had this has been our naturalization act since 1790. Now, in 1794, they decided to raise it to 5 years. And in 1798, when we had the problem with the French Revolution and we started getting a lot of Catholics in, they moved it to 15 years. And then I think in about 1808 or so, they moved it back down to 5 years. Now, so nothing, that's been our naturalization act until, like he mentioned, the corporation came in 1871, the territorial one. And then they started messing with this in 1865. And they messed and messed and messed. And then, if you look up the 1920s, so in the 1920s, we presented another naturalization act, and the Jews were trying to thwart, which they didn't accomplish. But they decided in 1920 they wanted to, say we could have 3% of, what was previously here. You could have that come in, and from the census of 1910. Well, then there was a bunch of argument, and then 1924 they said, "Oh no, we're going to go back to 1890, and we're going to reduce it to 2%." So that took out all the Asians. The Asians couldn't be here. So it really honed in on it's just white European.
Alex has her hand raised again. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I have two questions for possibly MJ. And I'm looking at the image you sent from the first Congress. So so the first question is if at the time before the 14th Amendment, only immigrants could become those small cap citizens of the United States, and we only had state citizens at the time. Is it correct then that there was no official document for any state citizen that would make him also a United States citizen?
Correct, because that
And
didn't exist.
okay, and then the second question would be, according to the language of Section 1 here, I wonder, why does it say to support the Constitution of the United States and it's leaving out the of America or for America? And that was already at the time, just when they just had enacted the Constitution? Why did they leave out the of America?
Because if you have you looked at the Articles of Confederation?
I did, but I might have
Okay, the very
forgotten
first
this and that.
statement
Yeah.
in the very first statement of the Articles of Confederation tells us the style.
Yeah,
And
you're
that's
right.
what
Yeah.
Grant was talking about. Their style. It's all on the Chicago style of manual of styles. Everything is based on this. Have you guys heard of the Justinian deception? Stuart
No,
Romilly. Well,
I
that's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing to investigate. This all happened about 800 AD with Justinian, one of the Roman guys, one of the Roman rulers. But
but the style was of America, right? As far
the
as I
style
remember.
was all caps for the first letter, and the only word that wasn't a capitalized is of. So that was at a capital at the beginning of each word, and it was the United States of America. That is the style of
Right.
the American nation.
So now, why did they leave out the of America out of the
Because
statute?
it's not the American, this is a contract.
So already at the time, right after, a
Yes.
few years later,
It was started with the Treaty of Paris in 1783. And
Yeah.
it was these guys, it was Adams, John Adams, our second, not second president, the president after George Washington, because he wasn't our second president. We had 11 presidents before these guys.
Uh-huh.
Our presidents only were in for 1 year. Yeah, him, and he was an esquire. And it was Benjamin Franklin. He was an esquire. These guys were not Americans. They were Brits. And they went over and with King George, and they sucked us. We didn't really win.
So when they created this language, what exactly did they want to create there already? What were
Okay.
they? Mhm.
Well, if you understand that we are an inverted pyramid, they have flipped it up and put them at the top and the counties at the bottom. We are actually this. We're an inverted pyramid with the triune God at the top, and the wide part is the counties. Below that is the states, who are under our feet, legislation under our feet, and they are simply the voice of the people on the county. And then underneath that is the very bottom, the Confederate. It's the Confederate which we're talking about here.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you brought that up, MJ, because see, Grant, that's what I was talking with Grant about. You'll hear it if you listen to our video from last week. Give some elaboration on that maybe, and Grant kind of cut in. We were discussing that. Remember I told you last week, MJ mentioned the Confederate. Grant pointed out last week, I was a little confused on that because I only understand the Confederate as being the breakaway. Grant, give your view on the Confederate, and then let's hear what MJ has to say.
Yeah, a Confederate is just a way of a business organization.
Hold on, MJ. Go ahead,
Okay.
Grant.
I'm assuming she's talking about the Confederation of States that came together to form the Republic.
Correct.
She's not read yes, right, yeah. Okay. But then that was set aside, Grant said, right, Grant?
Well, we created, that done created the Continental Congress. We done had a government, but once we got the Treaty of Paris, we got recognized in international law. So when that newfound status that they were granted that was recognized pursuant to the treaty and international law, then they were going to create a more perfect union. They were going to take what they had and make it better. But this time they were doing it as sovereigns.
Creating the Union, right? In other words, the
Yeah,
Confederate became the Union.
They created a more perfect union, having the status of sovereigns recognized in international law to create a government for their own nation.
Go ahead, MJ. You don't have to raise your hand at this point. You can go back and forth with Grant.
Okay. Yeah, because was that the Universal Postal Credit Union Treaty, right? The UPU had to recognize them. It recognizes, is that?
You broke up on me. I couldn't hear you.
The UPU, the Universal Postal Credit Union, or the Universal Postal Union, had to recognize us, correct? Is that what had to recognize us as a country?
Treaty was recognized in international law.
I think it was the UPU that was doing that. recognizing.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is, it seems to me to be legit. Maybe, again, you're extremely knowledgeable, MJ. You're awesome. We're on the same team. We don't all know everything, and we might, be off on a thing here or there, and that's why we're having the discussions. Is it conceivable that Grant's making a valid point where you're putting forth the Confederate? You were right, because that's how it was initially put together, as a Confederate. But then, like he said, after the Treaty of Paris, when they were granted sovereignty, they said, now that we're sovereigns, we're gonna make a more perfect union.
A perfect union with who? Who are they making the perfect union with? See, this is what we've got to understand.
Right. Go ahead, Grant. Grant and MJ, go ahead and clarify this whole issue. Go ahead. Between the two of you can go back and forth.
This is the way I see it. They were going to create a union of the several states of the United States of America. And they were going to become a union, or unified, through that central government they were creating. And they granted it certain enumerated powers that they needed it to do in order to establish the union.
Well, we were already established. We were established by the Articles of Confederation. That was the perpetual union. What they were doing was not, we were already a perpetual union. And what that means.
MJ, go ahead.
Now,
Let's, if you make a statement back, both of you, if you make a statement, let the other person respond. You guys go back and forth, but don't ramble on. Let each other go back and forth, because this is significant. Go ahead, Grant.
But when they made that Articles of Confederation, they were still considered by the Crown under the law of agency as subjects to King George III.
Correct.
He never recognized that.
Correct.
It was only
but that doesn't mean we weren't already who we were who we are. That is the Republic.
I don't disagree with you that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was the people, and that was
Yes.
the initial documents of the creation of the country. But we're no longer under the Articles of Confederation. We're under the,
Well, that's up for debate.
which is established by the Constitution.
That's up for debate.
I think to say it's up for debate, I think Grant can add some clarity to it. Let's let him, and because I think that the whole issue of debate has come about, frankly, as a result of a lot of the infiltration and misinformation campaigns that have been taking place going all the way back to the day. So I think it makes perfect sense. You're right, MJ. The Articles of Confederation, here were these godly men that were putting forth their opposition to the king to establish their own nation, and therefore it was under the Articles of Confederation. But then that was even before the American Revolutionary War, which, when that took place and the Treaty of Paris was made, then they were granted sovereignty that they did not previously have. And at that point, they had to make further adjustments in saying, now we're going to establish, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Grant or MJ, that they actually established the federal territorial plane as a contract with the king, because we know the king owns it anyway. So I think that was their way of safeguarding themselves, and that's what the Constitution is about. Okay, king, you can control this government and your other subjects, which are going to be eventually called 14th Amendment citizens, but we, the posterity, are reserving for ourselves and our posterity everything that we've established. Grant, go ahead and elaborate on that. Give them time. MJ, go ahead, Grant.
Well, I just said that once they got recognized by the Treaty of Paris, the war was ended. They used that sovereign authority pursuant to the Treaty of Paris, just as their own words said, in order to form a more perfect union. They had already created a union, I agree, the Continental Congress and all that, but that was never recognized by the king. And all governments are run by the law of agency. So go look up the law of agency and read it, because they were agents of the king at that time. But once they got the Revolutionary War, they got that new status of sovereigns. So now they were going to create a more perfect union. And they took aspects from the previous Articles of Confederation and adapted it. And there was great arguments among those people that constructed the Constitution as to what to put in and what to leave out and how to rewrite it in this new Constitution.
Good, MJ. It's between you and Grant. Just give each other time to talk, and when you hear them stop, one or the other stops, the other can proceed. Go ahead.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
Let me just say quickly, hold on. Let me just say
okay.
quickly, welcome to Seth. We're joined by Seth. Seth, please raise your hand if you have any questions or comments. Please feel free to raise your hand and I'll call you right in. Go ahead, Grant.
And, when you read a court case from the Supreme Court, they don't refer to the Articles of Confederation. They're always referring to the Constitution, because the Supremacy Clause in Article 6 says this Constitution, and all laws made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made, which they were explicitly referring to the Treaty of Paris, or that shall be made, are the supreme law of the land, and every judge in every state is bound thereby. Didn't say anything about the Articles of Confederation.
A constitution is a contract.
I agree.
We're talking two different things here.
Well, let me reiterate my point then. And if you can elaborate on this, Grant, it seems to me, and my son was agreeing too, my son's done a lot of research on this, that they purposefully put forth the federal territorial government to protect themselves, knowing that that was going to be an entity in territories controlled by King George. And they were to be protected. Okay, King, you can control commerce. You can control all these other new people that are going to come over here into this. But we, posterity, that's what they were looking to protect. That's why they said for ourselves and our posterity. They were looking to protect that. And that's what is protected by the Constitution more than anything, is the posterity and the blood privity. The privity of blood of those, because they did it for themselves and their children and their children's children and children's children, which is the blood posterity. I think that's a point that's perhaps overlooked or hasn't been considered by people. But when you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, knowing that it is a corporation, that it is owned by the crown, and that they wanted to make sure that they were getting themselves and their posterity protected. Okay, King, yeah, you can have this and this and this, but your little government is going to abide by this and this and this and this for ourselves and our posterity.
Well, I really don't think that they created this government for the king. They created it for themselves, and they created this federal entity to give it certain powers which would be needed, particularly when we're dealing with international events.
Correct.
But
like going to war or whatever.
Correct.
But now the Commerce Clause was the ability to control commerce was given to Congress in the Commerce Clause.
Correct.
And that was a commerce between the states. And then they control the commerce internationally. Congress is supposed to control and regulate the commerce internationally.
Right. So the sticking point is the fact that we say it so many times that they continued coming over here. They continued trying to have wars. They eventually got their bankers in and they infiltrated and hijacked. That's the bottom line. And now they control Congress. They control the government. The king does. The crown does.
Via the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank ran out of the city of London. But I don't think it was the founders' intent or in their imaginations that such a thing would ever occur.
But you do concur that they certainly put forth the Constitution as a protection between themselves and that government, that federal government.
Yeah, because they didn't want to create something that was going to get so powerful that could take away what they fought to get. And that's why they limited the government. They created the separation of powers between our form of federalism, between the federal government and the states, because the rights, see, it says in there, the Congress was just given certain rights in that federal government authority. Everything else under the 10th Amendment was to the states or to the people.
Yeah.
Retained by them.
And now this is
So-
where, that kind of segues into what the bigger discussion is here on behalf of all Americans that are considered Americans today is who are we the people? Who is an American? Who are the posterity? MJ, you're rightfully quick to bring in the triune God equation to this because we're talking about God's people. And I made the point earlier that obviously, if we look at the United States of America today, it's a den of sin, it's a den of iniquity. Our government's corrupt, and that's all by design. So I think we're certainly living right now in the time of the sifting, right? The wheats and the tares, the good fruit and the bad fruit. And I think that's a factor here. And I think it seems to me that that's part of what's going on right now is God separating his people in what was a godly nation. The Republic of the United States of America was founded as a godly nation.
It is a godly nation.
Right, you're
The
right.
American nation has not lost its identity.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me on that. When I say it was founded, and it is, but it's been infiltrated and hijacked and has a
Correct.
corrupt government right
Correct.
now.
Mainly,
Acting.
yes. Now, do you see the little diagram I have in the chat?
Let me see.
Because this goes along with what Grant was saying. See, they have inverted that. Do you guys see that little
Yeah, I
document?
do. I do.
Yeah. So on top is the triune God. He's the king of this republic, and the government's on the shoulders of the Lord Jesus Christ. And we are his subjects and his children. And we are the green part. The posterity is the green part. And we are the union of states. And we, as the union of states, decided to create the Confederate, which is the gray part. Which is the states, and they are an instrumentality of we the people on the 3,143 counties of the Union. We own them. They're
Right.
under our feet. The legislation is under our feet.
I think everything you're saying and everything that's illustrated on that image there is accurate, except you may have just been missing the points I think that have been made that are valid, that those God's people, when they were granted their sovereignty to actually, because this is what I think very few
you didn't
people
let
are
me
familiar with.
finish, Grant. You didn't let me finish, Mike.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So underneath the light gray or the medium gray is a light gray. That is what is under the contract. The Constitution is that little area. It has enumerated rights, only a few, and they only are, all they're doing is working. They just work with the states. They don't even work with us on the county. The only way they can work with us in the county is, I think, what is it? One of the enumerated rights is they can call together a militia, and they can dictate what the militia is supposed to learn. But the states can then teach the militia if there is a time when they need that. That it's important.
Grant, do you want MJ to email that to you? The image she's talking about?
Yeah, you can have her to send it to me.
All right. Are you okay with your email being mentioned in this
Put it
video?
in the chat.
Just give it to her.
Yeah, can you write it in the? Oh, you can't write it in the chat. Oh, let me write it in the chat. I'll write it. Hold on. I'll just send it to you directly, MJ. Hold on.
Well, why don't you call me? I'd like to have your number anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me give
Yeah,
you
I'll call and
my
give
phone
you.
number.
And then Alex has her hand raised again. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I have a question to both, either or both, MJ and Grant, because I think you guys both agreed on that the Constitution is a contract. And I wonder, do you guys think it is a contract with containing the same elements as a contract needs, like meeting of the minds and consideration and all that? Or do you guys think it's a different kind of contract? And if so, why?
Well, I would say it was written by the sovereign people. And I mean, there's lots of Supreme Court cases say that, you know, all power and authority resides in the people, and the people created that Constitution, which is a binding contract between the people and the government that they created.
And again, I need to insert there because people will hear this video and you just made a statement. The Supreme Court has ruled that all the powers in the people. So obviously there's millions of Americans out there that just come treading across the border and they think because they're on American land, they're it. They're the power. They're not. They are 14th Amendment citizens, if that, if they're not just here unlawfully to begin with. And as we've indicated in other videos, Grant's pointed it out, he cited the case, the Supreme Court has ruled that 14th Amendment citizens are property and franchises of the U.S. government, and they are not posterity.
And I agree with Grant that it's a valid contract. The issue is the Tories we shouldn't have got them in there. That's the issue. And really they just need to leave. You know, because they've way overstepped their bounds. And we have and that's why it says in the Declaration of Independence, when we have a government that's overstepping its bounds, it is our duty. It is our duty to say goodbye.
Dissolve it.
Correct.
No,
and the Constitution can still be used, but it should be used with posterity. Posterity should be running the bottom of that pair.
That's exactly right. Go ahead, Grant. You were going to say something.
Yeah, there's a Supreme Court case that said that the people have the right to change or dissolve their government anytime they choose.
Yep.
And again, I'll add the footnote that the people meaning the posterity.
Correct. Just the posterity.
But then could the people sue the government as a whole and or one actor of the government under the laws of contract based on the Constitution?
Yes, the posterity. You know how the government has sovereignty over 14th Amendment citizens? A 14th Amendment citizen cannot sue the government. They have sovereignty over the
Yeah, that's why I said the people.
Right. But the people, the posterity, yes, they can sue the government. They can abolish the government. They have the authority to do it because they created it.
But under the law of contract is what I mean. I'm pointing to the elements of a lawful contract, which has like 4 or 5 elements, I think.
So within the contract itself, under Article 3, which is where we the people created the judiciary, it says in there under the controversies clauses listed in Article 3 that we the people can sue the United States. It's written into law that we have the right to sue the United States.
Tave has his hand raised. Go ahead, Tave.
Hey, Mike, when we were talking back when we were doing the militia thing, didn't we have Eric come on and tell us and explain to us very clearly that on a local level, that, like you guys were saying, you're talking just about the posterity going in and removing the government. Didn't then just tell us that we could do that as just not say whoever right now, because we the people are, you know, they work for us. Was that not true?
That was not true. Eric is wrong on several issues. Go ahead, Grant.
Okay.
To understand the situation that you're in, you have to understand the law of agency. And that's the principal agency relationship. It's referred to numerous times in the Supreme Court cases. Once you see it mentioned a lot. So under the principle of the United States of America is the people. Now, we gave that government certain authority that they have. But we, the people, could take it away. We could dissolve it. If we all got together, we could dissolve it.
Correct.
But if you are a U.S. citizen, you're not a principal. You're an agent. Now, when we were in a republic, let's say you came to me and I was a state citizen of this state, and you came to me and said, hey, I want to run for Congress. Okay. See, under Chisholm versus Georgia, the sovereignty devolved upon the people, and we were all sovereigns. But I'm not your agent and you're not mine, because we're both equal under the laws of the United States. So, but let's say you came to me and said, I want to run to be a congressman. I said, okay, so I'll vote for you. Okay, you get elected. When you got elected, you had to take an oath to the Constitution and to uphold that office. Well, you were taking that oath essentially to the people. Well, when you did that, you stepped down from your position of a sovereign in legal relations to we the people, and you became our agent. You became our trustee, because you're to operate that office for us. Okay? So, but now what you don't understand is that everything has been flipped since beginning in 1933, and they finished it in 1945, I think, when they completely created a new federal territorial government. In today's world, if you're a U.S. citizen and I say, hey, I'm going to run to be congressman and you all vote for me, well, when I take that oath, I become your principal and you become my agent, because you agreed to be the property of the United States. And now I'm in that government. And I'll go back to Barack Obama. He gave his speech when he was president. He was talking to mostly African Americans, and he was trying to get people to go on to his new insurance, Obamacare. And he was sitting there talking to those people, and he said, "You don't know how to take care of yourself. Let the sovereign do it." And he told them the exact truth. And for the vast majority of Americans, as U.S. citizens, they don't know how to take care of themselves. He was telling them, you need to shut up and be quiet and let us take care of you.
Yeah, and a counterpoint to that, just for the record, because my son's brought it up a few times, is when certain people tried to bring Obama's faulty birth certificate to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court threw it out, saying that they did not have standing to be there.
Right.
Whereas, because they were 14th Amendment citizens, whereas a sovereign,
most likely.
right, most likely, whereas a posterity sovereign would have the authority to do that. Which, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's some instances that a U.S. citizen would have the right to sue. They do it all the time.
Right.
But there's certain things they would not have standing to do. That only one of the owners of the people, as the owners of this nation, would have standing, particularly under Article 3. Because if you go read Article 3, it refers to citizens. And it's a capital C citizen. And when they wrote that Constitution, the only citizen that existed was the one that was recognized in the Treaty of Paris, because the 14th Amendment hadn't been created yet.